Hi, and welcome back to the Holistic Health Bites podcast. Today, I am joined by Nicole Starbuck, and we're going to have a fascinating conversation about kind of where the energy side of things, the spiritual side, kind of intuition, and how we can use that side of things in addition to the more physical modalities like nutrition and exercise and other lifestyle factors to really take charge of our health. So, welcome, Nicole. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to sharing.
I am really excited. So, will you just take a few minutes and kind of tell everybody what your specialty is, how you got into this, maybe a little bit of your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Nicole Starbuck. I'm a psychic empath, quantum energy healer, spiritual mentor, and life coach. And what I do is I show people how to tune into their intuition and develop their spiritual skills and abilities so that they can use that as a powerful tool for manifesting their dreams and making their dreams a reality.
Wow, that is a fascinating field that you have gotten yourself into. I'd love to know how you got started in that.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a long story because I first discovered my spiritual gift and abilities, which is psychic intuition, when I was 9 years old. And I discovered it when I was walking out of school to get picked up. One day, I just randomly had this thought that a bird was going to poop on me. And then 5 seconds later, I'm walking under the street and this bird poops on me. And I just remember looking down, like, oh my gosh, like that's disgusting. And also, like, what the heck? I just predicted this. And ever since then, there's been all these synchronicities of I would have a dream or a premonition or an inkling or a hunch feeling, and then all of a sudden it would come true. And I did not have the resources or support system in place to develop that further. I grew up in a very conservative religious household, and things like that were frowned upon and construed as evil. And so I hid a lot of that for many, many years. And I ended up with a lot of anxiety because I was getting these hits and not knowing what to do with them. I ended up with a lot of depression because I was not living in alignment with my authentic truth, my soul's mission, and life purpose, which then resulted in disease or dis-ease because I was literally not at ease with myself. And as I mentioned before the recording, I had a disordered eating condition called orthorexia and just a lot of control issues. And then I ended up in the ER, which was my wake-up call. I had had a panic attack, not knowing what it was. And that was really my sign that something needed to shift. And so I started out on a personal development journey. And I got real deep into all sorts of mindset work and mindset shifts and reading all the books and going to the seminars and all the things. And I realized that something was still missing. So I had the body under control. I had the mindset under control, but I was missing the spiritual component. And so that brought my second spiritual awakening where I went back into my psychic development, went full into the spiritual realm and combining and merging all these seemingly different aspects of self, the mind, body, spirit, into a holistic practice, which is now what I do today, is showing others how to do the same.
Oh, that is so powerful. And I think just like you found, that's probably a really common piece that's missing for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I think we all hear about nutrition and fitness and, the more physical side of things, but we don't hear a lot about the emotional side of things and the spiritual side and the kind of inner working stuff. And I think that is a missing component for so many people, whether it's past trauma, current trauma,
Yeah.
like whatever that is, if we're not leaning into that and healing that part of ourselves, or at least being in touch with it, there's a huge gap missing for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with just the society we're brought up in is very, not that there's anything wrong with divine masculine, but it's very toxic masculine in the sense it pushes you to push your body past its limits. And if you're not in a certain place at a certain time, then somehow you failed, right? That's the pressure. So that was my thinking growing up is, well, if I just go to school and get good grades and get a good job with benefits, everything's going to be fine, right? And it was not fine because I was not merging and really embodying the divine feminine, which is that ease and flow and that grace and self-love and self-worth and self-compassion that we get from tuning into our intuition and following our soul's calling.
Oh, I love that. What do you recommend for people to get started exploring this? If they're like, I don't even know, am I in touch with that? I don't even know. What would you say to tell people to get started?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to start with this really basic framework. This is what I guide all my one-on-one clients through. This is what I guide all the group programs through is where are you now in your life? Just kind of taking an inventory of where are you now? Where would you like to be? Right? So that's the manifestation visualization piece, the intention setting or goal setting, if you want the masculine term for that. And then what is the slow moving energy or resistance that's holding you back from actually having that now? I don't use the word block or struggle or stuck because I feel like that creates the block or the struggle or the stuckness. So
Yeah.
what's the slow moving energy? And then that really gets us to turn inward and examine having that self-awareness of, oh, well, actually, I'm not as successful as I'd like to be because I actually have money resistance, like resistance towards receiving, because when I was growing up, I had parents that said, oh, well, money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work hard for what you want or fill in the blank, right? Most things, 99.9% of our things go back to childhood, right? Or ancestral patterns. Like for me, I had a history of women who were afraid to speak up and show up and were scared to be seen and to be heard. And so we had healers and psychics like all through my lineage, but I'm the one now breaking that cycle because we live in a time and a place where it's safe to actually do that and to break those paradigms.
Oh, that's so important for people to recognize that sometimes this was generational. Sometimes it's not even something that happened to you, but long,
Yeah.
long time ago. And it's just been
Yeah.
passed down. And yeah, these are the things that actually run in families. Not so much, the things that we like to blame on genetics and those things, but it's these traumas and things that hold us back that are really well run in families for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to circle back to the orthorexia piece for you. And how did you identify what that was? What did it look like? How did you kind of climb out of that?
I actually didn't realize what it was until after I was already healing from it. I came across something and I'm like, oh, that was me. Um, so what happened was I had gone to school, gotten good grades, was graduating like top of my class with honors at college, right? And we were about to head out to to Denver. We were living in Tucson at the time. We are about to head out to Denver. And I kind of felt like I was at this crossroads of, okay, I'm debt free. I didn't have any student loan debt, but also there's still this pressure to be like a successful adult. Now I'm graduating from school and I like have this big job with all the benefits. And it just felt like a lot for me being 21 years old. And I started controlling, I noticed this, started controlling the things that I could control because one, I didn't have the anxiety under control. I didn't have the depression under control. I didn't have even my finances under control. So one of the things that I could control was what I was eating. And I hyper focused on, so for anyone that doesn't know orthorexia, it's an unhealthy obsession with eating healthy. So it was all about like macros and all about like hitting a certain number of calories, but not going over. And like I couldn't eat certain foods because those were like bad foods. And like I also like exercised excessively, like obsessively, and I drank so much water, like an obscene amount of water. I actually overdosed on water twice and had to be hospitalized for it. And it just really was about control. It wasn't so much the body image as it was about me wanting to have some semblance of control over my life.
I think that's basically the definition of all the eating disorders, really.
Yeah.
It's that thing that you can control. I mean, sometimes it's an escape, but a lot of times it's the control piece. And I think that's such a big lesson for a lot of people to learn is that when it climbs to that obsessive level or when it, becomes unhealthy, even when it's a healthy thing that you're doing, it's not serving you. And being able to recognize that is so powerful. And I think our entire culture is kind of set up to create those obsessions. I know for me, it wasn't necessarily the eating healthy that I was obsessed with per se, but just eating in general. I was like you, I was hyper focused on the schedule and how often and portion sizes and all the things that I wasn't necessarily hyper focused on maybe the individual ingredients or the macros, like in your case, but I was constantly thinking about food 24/7 while eating. I'm planning the next thing I'm going to eat. And that, any level of obsession, no matter what it is not really healthy. And I didn't want eating to be a second job. And that's what it felt like. So I think if any of that resonates with anybody out there, then it's a time to take a good hard look at why you're doing what you're doing, how you even got to where you are, and what you'd rather be doing instead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it brings, and I'm sure you talk about this too in your podcast and your programs of the intuitive piece of it is when you're thinking about food or wanting to eat or not eat and like controlling that, it's what do you actually want? What do you actually desire? It's that turning inward piece of, oh, am I hungry or am I bored? Like, am I questioning my food choices because I know this isn't good for me or because I have some sort of control issue?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I would love to dive more into the intuition piece, because especially when you hear like intuitive eating, there's a lot of people that think that that just means, oh, well, I'm craving a cookie, so my intuition is telling me I need a cookie. I would love for you to dive into a
Yeah,
little bit about
not
what
always. Yeah.
intuition really means.
So the intuition really means is if you're craving the cookie, is there something about the cookie that you find comforting that you feel like you need to comfort? So why do you feel the need to comfort? Right? I get this a lot. My weakness is fast food. And now that we have kids, it's takeout. So I've noticed when I'm having like a really full day or stressful week, it's like, oh, let me order, you know, Uber Eats or whatever. And my husband's like, I noticed you've been ordering Uber Eats a lot. Like, is something going on? Because it's the comfort, it's the stress, right?
Yeah.
So that's my signal is if I'm going to my phone to go order off Uber Eats, it's really that turning inward of, am I ordering because I just really want the food for no other reason than I want the food, or am I ordering because I'm feeling stressed and this is my out,
Yeah.
right?
So much of this is these seemingly automatic behaviors. We just find ourselves snacking. We find ourselves in the pantry again. We find ourselves in the fridge again. We find ourselves doing all these things. But like you said, if you really stop and think about why you're doing it, what are you trying to feed? What are you trying to smother? What are you trying to, hide from or avoid feeling? Or, what is it that you're seeking in that moment? Is it comfort? Is it pleasure? Is it, avoiding boredom? Is it avoiding whatever that is? Figure out what that drive really is and find a healthier alternative to deal with that, or be okay with it. Sometimes we just also need to be okay with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We have to be okay in the discomfort. And that's
Yeah.
where the growth really happens.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, something else that comes to mind is the mindfulness piece of it. If you are indeed going to eat the cookie, right? This is not a guilt or shaming place. It's okay to eat the cookie. It's like, okay, like we can scarf down the cookie, which is also fine, but what would it feel like to really like take a bite and chew and like feel like I like chocolate chip cookies, so like feel the chocolate and like have it, go down and like really make it like a spiritual experience even of fully being in the moment and enjoying whatever it is that you're consuming. That in itself, food can become a spiritual practice because you're nourishing your body in a very intentional way.
I love that. And you might be surprised sometimes when you indulge in the thing and when you're actually paying attention to what it tastes like, it's not that good. You don't actually want it. And then no longer do you want that thing in the future. You kind of move past that addiction to some of these foods. But when you're just, slamming them in and you're not even really paying attention, you don't realize that some of this stuff doesn't actually taste all that good.
Yeah, it's true.
And so I think there's two sides to that, but I 100% agree with you. The more we can pause and enjoy and recognize what this thing is in the moment, get the pleasure from it, get the whole connection to the food that you're consuming, whether it's quote unquote good or bad food, make it an experience, make it worthwhile to have that treat if that's what you're going to do. So I think that's really powerful. I'd love to dive in a little bit more on the mindfulness side. What are some of your favorite ways to really tap into mindfulness and, work on that muscle?
Yeah, for me, mindfulness and the spiritual practice, like, and the magic that comes behind that is almost synonymous. And it's this constant embodiment piece of what are the things that bring me joy, not just like, oh, let me make myself happy, but what are the things that really remind me of my soul's mission, my life purpose, and really like bring me alive, like my soul on fire. And I have a few different practices that I do daily, and some of the other things rotate. But consistently, what I do is take a shower, which is one of the things that most people take for granted. Like they're just, oh, I'm just going to take a shower. But for me, it's really become this beautiful spiritual practice of getting into the shower, having that alone time. And I visualize the water washing away all the old energy that's no longer serving me and bringing in all the like grace and wisdom and positivity and all the beautiful abundance that I'm calling into my life and just really cleansing my entire body, the inside and out. And that visualization process is really powerful. So it's a really simple way of bringing mindfulness and presence into a seemingly mundane experience. And then for me, it's also that daily practice of having, I used to drink coffee like religiously, but now I switched to a coffee alternative, a mushroom coffee. And I found that that's also really helped with the anxiety piece. Is that's the other thing, like these things don't necessarily go away. You just learn how to manage them more effectively, right? And so I like to, like turn my coffee with intention and add cinnamon for flavor. And I like it becomes a practice. And then drinking it, like we were talking about consuming food, like taking a sip and really feeling that in my mouth and taking the time to swallow and just taking it slow and like really being being there in the moment without any stress or pressure of anything else. And there's some other things that I do, like going for a walk and one of the things that I like to do now is like when my kids are eating, like just being with them while they're enjoying a meal, even if I'm not eating, because there's just something really, really pleasurable about just taking some time out from the rest of the day and being fully present and mindful in the moment.
I love that. I think that's another practice that a lot of us just aren't used to. We don't pause and sit and be fully present. We're distracted. We're on our phones. We're having three conversations at once. And, we're also cooking and doing all these things simultaneously. And we're really just not that present in the moment. And I think that's part of that. We're avoiding boredom. We all wear the busy badge and we're proud of just how busy and how many things we've got going on at once and how many things we can juggle at once. And it's really not a very healthy practice at all.
No, yeah. I found, my husband and I, we've been together, married 13 years, and it was almost like we were having this competition of who's busier. And I realized it was this competition about who's more miserable. And
Right.
that's what broke the cycle is I just sat down one day. I said, you know what? I don't really care to argue over who's crankier or who's unhappier because that doesn't serve. And I
No.
think after that conversation, it just kind of dropped off because it wasn't about who's done the most or who's busier. It was about how can we bring more peace and love and joy and mindfulness into the home, regardless of what else is going on.
I love that. I think circling back a little bit to bringing more joy back into your life, I think that's such a powerful thing. And I talk about this all the time when I'm talking about ways to de-stress, because so many people think it's like, especially women, it's about bubble baths and getting your nails done and getting your hair done. And yeah, those can be good self-care practices, but there's so much more to it. And sometimes those are not the things that work for you as an individual. I don't get my nails done. I'm not a big sit in the salon chair person, and I don't particularly like bubble baths. So, finding other things that bring you joy is one of the best ways that you can de-stress and take care of yourself and really, get back into that being present in the moment. And so for some people, that might be painting or
Yes.
music or dancing or walking or playing with pets or like whatever that looks like. Being intentional about doing things that bring you joy is such an important part. And I'm sure that's a big part of your practice as well. Do you have ways to kind of help people, tap back into those things that bring them joy and really make those priorities?
Yes, and I can't really talk about joy without talking about the lower chakras. So if anyone is not familiar with the chakras, it's these energy centers throughout the body and beyond, but basically there's seven within the body that follow the main meridian from the top of your head to the bottom of your spine or the base of your pelvis where your groin is. And so joy really comes from this rooting and grounding in knowing who you are and what you do and why you do it. And for so many of us, especially women, we have all these preconceived notions of who we should be, right? Shoulding on ourselves that, oh, we have to be a good daughter and a good spouse or partner, and we have to be a good mom or a good employee or whatever, fill in the blank. So all these come in our root chakra, which is at the base of our pelvis, that actually hold us back from embracing who we want to be. And so, energetically, if we were to tune into the space, I like to do guided meditations with my clients and in my group programs. Is if we close our eyes and take a deep breath and actually take a moment to breathe, right? Like breathing in all this peace and calm and tranquility and breathing out any negativity or any energy that's no longer serving us and just kind of go into our body. Because I don't think a lot of people do this. I think people just go and go and go and they're not actually like coming into their body. And you start to feel into these connections of, well, I'm a daughter and I'm a wife or a partner or a girlfriend, or I'm a mom and I'm an employee or I'm a business owner, whatever these roles and responsibilities are, if you can just like feel into those connections, you can feel it like pulling on you. It's like a weight, right? Like on your feet, just like, ugh. Right. So like visualizing cutting those off and releasing that and shedding that, just like we do with the water ritual, right? In the showers, like releasing that and just noticing that weight being lifted. And then I like to incorporate a lot of movement. I feel like movement brings the joy back into the life because it's very in sync with when we were children, like bringing the inner joy, the joy from the inner child. When we were children, we would just move. We would just jump onto things and climb onto things and dance like no one's watching, and we would just move. But it's like now we're just like all like constricted. So I like to bring a lot of movement, right? A lot of like I dance regularly, put on a playlist and just dance and bring some of that inner child back into play and remembering like what did I like to do when I was a child? I like to draw, I like to paint, right?
I love
Play,
that.
go
Yeah.
outside. And so then we get into the chakra after that, which is the sacral chakra. This is really our sense of creativity, our sense of power, our sensuality. That's a lot of that belly movement, right? And I know for me, like my healing journey, bringing the joy back into my life, joy was my word of the year for 2019, and that was such an interesting journey for me because that's when I started learning about the energy healing side of things. This is when I had my spiritual reawakening of not just the mindset stuff but actually bringing the spiritual component back. And I remember this lower area here, my whole womb space was so closed off. I went to the doctor for severe abdominal pain. I had endometriosis and I had an ovarian cyst that they said was almost at the size for operation, was about that big, 5 centimeters.
Thanks.
Right. And I was like, oh, there has to be another way, right? Like just like when I woke up in the ER and they're like, oh, you should take medication for your anxiety. I'm like, no, there has to be another way. And then so I'm at this crossroads again. There has to be another way. And bringing the joy back into my life was a combination of honoring my soul's calling, which was to step up as that psychic and that healer, and then also to heal my body. I used some quantum energy healing techniques, binaural beats, meditation, visualization, and just cleared the issues that I was having to where the endometriosis healed and the ovarian cyst healed without surgery.
Wow. Wow. It's so amazing when you let your body do what it needs to do and stop interfering with the process. It's amazing how much healing can actually occur just naturally.
Yeah.
I love it. I would love to tap into the binaural beats. That's one of my favorite things as well. And I think so many people have never even heard of them. So can you give us a quick definition of like what they are, what they're used for, how to find them, how to use them, all the things?
Yeah. So at the time when I was healing from the ovarian cyst, I just Googled like binaural beats for ovarian healing, binaural beats for like womb healing, like those kinds. And you can find them anywhere on YouTube, right? And you it's not so much like, oh, there's a bad binaural beat, but some are better than others in the sense of not everyone is doing their research on like this is the frequency for this particular type of healing. So you kind of want to look into that. And what it is it's a particular tone or frequency that's been layered, right? And usually they overlay that with some sort of other sound or pretty music. So you're not hearing the of the beat. But because there's such power in these different frequencies of the particular tones and the frequencies, they go into your subconscious mind if you're going to do any sort of mindset binaural beat, or I do a lot of energy binaural beats for like giving me more energy or healing for, in this particular case, the whole womb area.
I love it. I use them a lot when I am hearing a lot of like background noise in the neighborhood or, in the house or whatever, and I need to focus on something. Yeah. I'll just put them in and turn it on to a focus frequency and it just helps me get so much more done and stay focused without getting distracted, overhearing conversations or overhearing, whatever's going on outside or whatever. I think they're so great. And then there's different frequencies for sleep and, meditation that you can use and creativity. And like, you just have to find the right frequency for the thing you're trying to accomplish, whether that's to calm or to ramp up or, whatever it is. I think it's just such a simple thing and so powerful. Mm-hmm.
And I used them too for my kids, like especially my daughter had a hard time sleeping as an infant. I would put on the deep sleep binaural beat to help her go to sleep, overlay that with some rain sounds, and it worked beautifully.
Oh, I love it. And they are best if you can do headphones so that you're getting the frequencies in each ear because they are, if they're made correctly, they should be different frequencies in each ear so that they come together to make that signal. That's why they're called binaural. And I think it's just such a simple way to do it, to really tap into that energetic side without necessarily feeling like you have to force it. You're just listening to music.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a simple thing to do. But
you hit it right there. Is these practices don't have to be complicated. It can be super simple, and they can change day to day. So maybe you're real into journaling for a while, and then all of a sudden you're like, no, you know what? I'm just going to do binaural beats, and that's great. And maybe you do that for a week or two, and then you're like, no, I'm just going to go for a daily walk, and you do that for a month or two, and then you switch to something else. Like, that's okay. It gets to be whatever it wants to be in the moment.
Yes, I love that. And I think that brings up two things I wanted to circle back to as well, which is, one is meditation. So many people have misconceptions or think it's complicated, or it's not for me, or I'm doing it wrong, or it doesn't work, or whatever. And then also journaling, same thing. Like, it doesn't have to be Dear Diary. It doesn't have to be, there's no rules around these things. So can you talk about those two modalities and how people can really like build their own practice? And there's no way to really do it wrong.
Yeah, I love these questions because for a spiritual mentor, I do things kind of differently. I'm not going to be the one that's going to tell you, oh, you have to sit and meditate for 30 minutes or an hour, like otherwise you're doing it wrong. Like, to me, there's no right or wrong way to do things. There's only what's right for you. And I will be the first to tell you, I am not a person that's going to sit there for 15, 20, 30 minutes and just meditate in a dark room with my eyes closed. Like, that's not my vibe. So I have found that, one, that's okay. And two, what really works for me is something called active meditation, where you take a seemingly mundane activity, for example, these are my least favorite things, doing the dishes or doing the laundry. And there's some sort of repetitiveness to it that you can kind of zone out. And that becomes a form of meditation because you release what's going on around you and just really allow the universe to speak to you, God, source, universe, whatever you call that higher power, to where I actually look forward to doing the dishes and doing the laundry, because that's when I'm like kind of in that meditative state, right? And same with journaling. Is I used to journal as a little girl. I journal every day, record my dreams, I did all the things. And somewhere along the line, I got busy and distracted. And so then I got real into a particular journaling practice, which I can share with you. And that worked for me beautifully for the season that I was in. And then I no longer needed it. And that's okay. Right? And then I go through seasons where I get back into it and it serves me for that season. And then I get into seasons where I don't. And so my 3-step journaling practice is starting with gratitude, because I believe that gratitude is one of the highest vibrations. Like, you can have gratitude for anything. Like, you're just filled with so much love. So finding at least 10 things that you're grateful for. And if 10 is really easy, move it up to 20. If 20 is really easy, do 30 until you find yourself kind of really having to stretch. Like, I'm grateful for the pen in my hand. Like, that's the vibe, right? And then taking that and just tuning into the manifestation piece of it is really doing some affirmations. And for me, affirmation combines the mindset piece of it with the spiritual piece of it. We touched on that, like, how do you blend the two? Is if there's something that you're wanting to create in your life, for example, more confidence, more love, more financial wealth and abundance, it's affirming that as if it's already true. I am confident, I am worthy, I am loved, I am accepted, and on and on. And again, start with 10. If that's easy, move it up to 20, etc. And then what I like to do, the third piece of it, is acting as if, or writing as if it's already happened. So let's take an example that's really common, right? Is, oh, I want to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds or whatever the case is. Okay, like, I'm so grateful that I've just hit my weight loss goal of 10 pounds and it feels so amazing to have completed this goal. And it was so much easier than I thought, and the weight just melted off and blah, blah, blah. And you actually write it as if it's already happened, the past tense, because that tells your brain that this has already happened. So now it's going to find evidence and find you opportunities and pathways to make that a reality.
Oh, that's such a powerful way to do it. And that is exactly how I've always done journaling as well, in that same order: gratitude, affirmations, and then writing any goal in your life as if it's already done. And be specific about, not just like in your example, the 10-pound weight loss, not just that I've lost the weight and I feel amazing, but what you can now do differently. What's different about your life? Be like, write a movie about your life and how amazing it is now that you've accomplished this thing. So whether that's financial, health, whatever, it doesn't matter. Write a really detailed story about how different your life is all the different ways that it's better, the compliments that you get, or the
Yeah.
job opportunities you now have, or, the comfort riding on an airplane, or like whatever that is for you, less anxiety, less depression, whatever your particular issue is that you really want to solve, be super detailed. The more detailed you can be, the more evidence your brain is going to go find. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about some common mistakes you see people make when it comes to any of these things, whether journaling, meditating, exercise, nutrition, whatever, any of these kinds of modalities that you deal with. Where do you see people kind of go off track, or maybe put too much pressure on themselves, or just think about it the wrong way?
Yeah, one of the things that I see people do is tell themselves that they don't have any control, right? So we talked about having this too much control in the sense of let me hyper focus on everything, but we have the opposite end of the spectrum of, well, I have absolutely no control over life and I'm just a victim to my circumstances and whatever happens, happens, right? And there's such a thing as like letting go of control, but also realize you are a powerful co-creator with the universe, that you have the power to shift and change and transmute and transform your reality, that your thoughts are things, and where your attention goes, energy flows. And that if you don't like what's happening to you, well, let's do something about that. And it's not that like overnight it's just going to magically transform, but you can, through your thoughts and your feelings and your actions, over time begin to change what's happening in your 3D physical reality. So that would be the first thing. And then the other thing I see people do is we get so hung up on a goal. For example, we'll use the weight loss example, losing 10 pounds, that we forget why we're doing it. And this ties so beautifully into what you were sharing, is how does that actually make you feel? What does that do for you? Right. And so when you think about, well, let me just lose 10 pounds, and if I didn't go to the gym today, then I'm a total failure and I've totally like lost the mark. It's, well, we're pursuing this intention. I like to use goals, intentions instead of goals, right? Because to me, there's more grace. So my intention is to treat my body as a temple. That's a totally different feeling than let me beat myself up about losing 10 pounds, right? When you start to see your body as a temple, it's like, oh, okay, like, would I desecrate the temple? Would I neglect the temple? No. You're going to treat it with kindness and respect and love and so much care, right?
And you're not likely to, reach for a low calorie snack because you're so hyper focused on that 10-pound weight loss, because that's not actually nourishing your body. It's not providing anything valuable. So if you treat your body like a temple, you would feed it good quality foods, not low quality diet foods. And so, I think it all snowballs into all of the decisions you make, and having the right mindset and the right approach is definitely key to doing it the right way, for sure.
Yeah. And then the last thing I see a lot of is, I mean, there's probably more, but this is what comes to mind, is thinking that we are broken, that we get stuck in these healing loops of, well, there's something wrong with me, which means I must be broken. Therefore, I must always be having to fix myself. So it's this constant chasing of some seemingly unattainable version of ourselves that we think if we just keep taking a course or doing a program or hiring a coach or whatever, then that's the purpose, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing.
And that's working in the exact same way as when you tell yourself the goal or the intention that you've already accomplished in the present tense, like it's already occurred. If you're doing this exact thing and telling yourself that you're broken and that you can't solve this and it's out of your control, you're doing the same thing. You're letting your brain find evidence that that's true.
Exactly.
So tell yourself the thing that you actually want to happen, and your brain will find the evidence for what you want to be true.
Yeah. So if you go into this with the mentality of everything happens in divine timing, I'm already the best possible version of myself in the moment. I'm completely aligned with my higher self, which is me having all this potential, right? Like, that's my reality, is I'm perfect just the way I am, and I love myself too much to let me stay that way. Then it's this beautiful invitation to pursue that path without that kind of nagging guilt of shame of, well, I'm healing because there's something wrong.
I love it. 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 All right. Anything else you'd like to touch on before we wrap up this show? Anything we haven't talked about?
Oh, I mean, there's probably other things I wanted to talk about, but I'm a huge believer of whatever comes up in the moment comes up, and that's exactly what somebody needed to hear in order to move forward with that next step. So if I could leave any parting pieces of wisdom, it would be that you are powerful. You already have the answers. The answers are inside of you. It's just a question of whether or not you're listening.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. How do people find you if they would like to know more about your work?
Yes, I would love to connect on social media, especially I'm fond of Instagram. So that's instagram.com/Nicole.Starbuck. That's Nicole Starbuck with a period in the middle. And then I also have a free Facebook group called the Conscious Collective, which is for like-minded kindred spirits to grow and learn alongside each other. And that is facebook.com/groups/Oracle Academy. That's Oracle as in aura, AURACLE Academy. And you can also find me at oracleacademy.com.
Amazing, amazing. And we will, of course, link up all that in the show notes so people can click to it very easily. Thank you so much for sharing all of your amazing wisdom with everyone today. I know I learned a ton. I love talking about this stuff, and it's different than the stuff I typically talk about when I'm much more talking about nutrition and fitness and the more physical side of things. So I think this has been a fantastic reminder of the other half of the story, which is the inner work and the spiritual side of things. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. I hope everyone will reach out to you and find out even more how they can really tap into this and become masters of their own spiritual work. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate being here.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Thank you.